I'm excited for our fourth and final workshop of this spring. Thank you all for being here. It's exciting. This is an exciting moment, but also a sad moment because this is the end of our workshops for the spring. But I'm very excited for our workshops in the fall. I hope you all sign up again. We're going to have new speakers. You're going to be matched with a new mentor. We're going to have new content. I think you're going to really enjoy it. But our workshop 4 topic is how to manage conflict in the workplace. This is a very big deal. And I think to maybe ask an early question, just to get the ball rolling on this topic, is when you're in a work environment, the question I have for you is, how do you want others to feel about you? Write in the comment section. I love to learn about it, because what's so critical is the intentionality that we have about how others feel about us. I think so often when we're in a stressful work environment, we think about blaming other people. We think, well, XYZ person wants to sabotage me. They're always trying to undercut me or undermine my work, or they just do these things just to frustrate me. But more often than not, I find that they don't do it on purpose. More often than not, I find that they don't even know that what they're doing is frustrating you. And so what I really want to open up for in terms of this conversation, this question, is how do you want other people to feel about you? Because there might be something that you do that frustrates somebody else. You don't even realize that that's what you're doing, because you maybe haven't set an intentionality. It just was the most convenient for you to do thing for you to do at the time, so you just kept on doing it. You had no idea that this frustrated other people. So write in the comment section, how do you want other people to feel about you at work? Do you want other people to think of you as reliable or dependable or hardworking or kind, friendly, always optimistic, nice, always having a good, positive, upbeat personality? How do you want other people to perceive you? I'd love to learn about that, because ultimately this is your reputation. This is how other people perceive you. And this is so critical, because I think it's so often, it's so easy to blame others for the things that they do that frustrate us, but it's so easy to be blind to how what we could do might frustrate them. So if we can set an intention for how we want other people to feel about us, if we think about that every single morning when we go into work, our likelihood of actually fulfilling and embodying that persona, that person, increases substantially. So I want to ask the question, how do you want other people to feel about you at work? Now, this is critical, because ultimately this means that you're going to have to remove any other personal baggage to make sure that you're still staying consistent with how you want other people to feel about you. It doesn't matter if you found out your grandma just got diagnosed with cancer, or that your dog just died, or that you're having rough things that are going on in your relationship. Does not matter, because at the end of the day, what matters is, are you able to stay consistent to who you said you wanted to be? And the person that is the most professional, the person that is really bringing it every single time, is the person that can stay the most consistent. Because if you start to let your personal stuff creep into your professional life, it's going to open you up to potentially not being the consistent person, the consistent intentionality that you've set for how you want other people to feel about you. And I think it's really important that you really work towards doing that, which leads to the 3 keys to success that I've shared with you in every workshop, which is your strategy, your story, and your state. And fortunately, we know how to get ourselves into a state conducive for being successful. No matter what is going on in our words, no matter how mad, sad, angry, dejected we're feeling about anything going on, we can get ourselves into an emotional state conducive for being happy, even if it's for a temporary period of time, through our motion. So what I want to do right now is I want you all to stand up, and I want you to shimmy it out. I want you to shake it loose. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. On the count of 3, scream. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go. You've got nothing to lose. Who cares if other people are looking at you? You're probably in your house anyways. With all the coronavirus craziness going on, you're probably in quarantine. This is the time to let loose. Because here's the thing. What we know is that when you are able to do that, you're getting your blood moving, you're getting your blood flowing in your brain, you're releasing endorphins in your mind, you're getting yourself into a state conducive for being successful. So by doing that, you are putting yourself you are taking yourself from wherever you were, and you're putting yourself into a much more elevated status. That is how you stay consistent. No matter what you want other people to feel about you, if you can get yourself physically into a state conducive for being successful, other people are going to perceive you as whatever feeling you want to set for yourself. So that's critical. The other key is your story. What is the story you tell yourself for why you will or will not be successful? This is critical. If you tell yourself, well, I can't do that, or this is impossible, or I don't know if I have the abilities to do something like that, you're going to achieve the outcome that you've set for yourself. And that is ultimately going to lead to the outcomes that you put on yourself. So if you tell yourself why you're going to be successful, if you tell yourself why you're going to make it work, you might have a chance of actually going out and achieving the outcomes that you want to achieve. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are the things that you can do on a daily basis to get yourself there? So maybe if you think to yourself, how do I want other people to feel about me? Maybe if it's to be kind. What can you do that's really kind on a daily basis to really reinforce that feeling you want other people to feel about you? If you want other people to feel that you are hardworking or confident or reliable, what can you do on a daily basis that will embody, that will reinforce you being kind, hardworking, or confident, or reliable? What are those things that you can do to set yourself up for success? That is your strategy. Those are the things that you can do on a regular basis. Now, the reason why this all relates to conflict management in the workplace is because these intentions about how we want other people to feel about us is critical to what we actually manifest at work. Now, it's so easy to get into a rut. It's easy to get frustrated. It's easy for us to blame other people for our problems. But here is a great way. This workshop on conflict management is a great tool for you to leverage to help you overcome a lot of the issues that you've got and that you've essentially had for yourself at work. One of the biggest things that I'm a big believer, I'm a huge proponent of, is this concept called this concept called observation, feeling, need, request. This is the key to nonviolent communication, which you might think, I'm not getting violent in the workplace. That's okay. But what I've observed is that this is one of the best ways to totally diffuse a situation. Whether somebody gives you a snide comment at work that you just didn't appreciate, or somebody made an action that you felt like just didn't respect you, or your time, or your abilities, or that overall just frustrates you. As opposed to getting pissed off, yelling at them, exploding at them, being passive aggressive and talking shit about them behind their back, or anything that does not target the issue head on, any of those actions are not productive. Observation, feeling, need, request is productive and can help you come to a solution. Now, here's how observation, feeling, need, request works. It literally follows the exact formula that I've laid out. Observation. What is the thing that you have observed? Now, the key with observation is that it's got to be undeniable. It happened, but there's no emotion to it. So, for example, the thing that really frustrates you is when John interrupts you at work, and let's say he just interrupted you 3 times in the course of a conversation. You can say, hey, John, I was hoping that we could chat for a minute. John says, yeah, sure, what's going on? You say, hey, so one thing that I observed is that in the course of this conversation, you interrupted me 3 times. Now, you don't say, you were being a jerk, you were being a dick, you interrupted me and really threw me off. Like no feelings tied to it, just you interrupted me 3 times. I started talking about this, and then you cut me off and started talking about that. I started talking about this, you cut me off, started talking about that, and then I started talking about this, and you cut me off and started talking about that. It's the key is that it's undeniable. It happened. It's something that John can say, you know what? You're right, I did interrupt you 3 times. Now, doesn't matter what his excuses were for interrupting you. The next part is the feeling. Now, the feeling is, how do you actually feel about that? You're not here to call out John and call him out for being a jerk. You're here to say, hey, when I am interrupted, I feel belittled. I feel disrespected. And now this is the big part, your need. Now, don't elaborate, by the way, when I say those feelings, don't elaborate on them. Just say, hey, I felt belittled. I feel belittled and disrespected. That's it. Everyone can relate to the feelings of being belittled and disrespected. Now, your need is critical because your need is like a higher level need that you've got, that you believe the world should work like this. In a work environment, the work environment should work this way, and that everybody can agree to that. And so your need is, you know what, hey, my need is that I work in a work environment where I feel like when I'm speaking that I'm being respected and that I'm at least being heard. And now that's critical. If you put that out there, John can probably agree to that. The last part is request. Now, what is a request that you can make to John so then he can start to take action that ultimately it can formulate change? Now, you don't want to make it something that's concrete. You don't want to say, hey, my request is that you never interrupt me again. Unrealistic. probably not going to happen. John may interrupt you sometime in the future, especially if he's weaning off this because it was a habit. But if your request is, hey, my request is that when I'm speaking, that you're conscious of what I'm saying and that you try your best to refrain from interrupting me when I'm speaking. That's a very fair and valid request. John can probably agree to that because you're not asking for too much. You're just asking for him to be conscious of it. So that is how observation, feeling, need request works. It ultimately just lays out exactly what the thing that happened was, how you felt about it, without calling out John or calling out the other person or talking about how bad of a person they were, sharing what your need is and your request for how they can implement that for the future. That is critical. Now, we're going to talk a lot about this later on tonight in this workshop with our guest speaker. Our guest speaker is an expert on conflict management in the workplace. I think you're going to really enjoy what our guest has to say. But those are my personal observations about what I've observed to work in observation in terms of conflict management. The last thing that I want to share before we jump into our guest speaker is this importance of teaching somebody else something that you've learned. One of the things that I've observed is that when people go through this workshop, when people go through this program, 20 is the magic number. If you tell 20 or more people about something you learned in this program, by the way, it doesn't necessarily need to be that you taught them a full seminar. It could be that you mentioned to your significant other or a friend, a peer, a colleague, hey, I learned about this thing called observation, feeling, need, request in Ambition and Motion workshop. That could be it. We know that when people tell 20 or more people about something they learned, anything they learned in this program, their likelihood of achieving their professional goals increases exponentially. And the reason why is because teaching something to somebody else reinforces that information in their mind. And so by doing that, by telling 20 or more people, the likelihood that this is going to stick, the likelihood that you are going to apply it in your professional environment, and the likelihood that you're going to achieve the professional goals that you've set for yourself, because that's been such a big focus of this program, increases exponentially. So what I would love for you to do after this workshop is to find somebody that you can teach something that you learned from this workshop this evening. I think that will really help reinforce what you're learning in this program, really help you make the most out of this experience. I'm so excited to dive into our guest speaker this evening. I really hope that, and I really encourage you to participate in the program for the fall, as you're going to get a new mentor, we're going to have new content, we're going to have new speakers. I think you're really going to enjoy it. This has been a pleasure working with you all, and I look forward to the next steps for your summer and beyond. So I'm so excited to transition to this next part of our workshop this evening. I've got a wonderful guest, as our topic is how to manage conflict in the workplace. I've got an amazing guest here to talk about that with us this evening. So I have Hallie Crawford. Hallie has been a certified career coach and national career expert for 19 years. She has helped thousands of people transition into their dream career, navigate the job search, and enhance their performance at work. Hallie is regularly featured in U.S. News, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, and Fox Business News. Hallie, thank you so much for being here this evening.
No problem. It is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So we are here to talk about how to manage conflict in the workplace. Now, a lot of the people that are in our workshops are in their careers. They may have started to face maybe work politics, communication issues, some barriers that might frustrate them as they pursue their paths forward. And so that is what we're going to talk about tonight. So I guess what I love to learn, I know I kind of give a brief intro of you, Hallie, but would you mind maybe giving us just a little rundown of who you are and a little bit more about your background, just so then our audience can learn a little bit more about you?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a certified career coach. I've been in coaching, training, and leading workshops for just over 19 years now. There's actually a lot of gray hair kind of hiding in here. So I'm 47. And I have an undergrad degree from Vanderbilt University and a graduate degree from the University of Illinois. Both are in communications and education. And I absolutely love what I do. My company has been in business for a long time, and I have several different resume writers and coaches on my team. And we are all incredibly passionate about helping people get into the right career fit and be successful in whatever that career fit is. So love this topic in particular of how to manage and handle conflict, because one of the kind of near topics that is near and dear to my heart is helping people leverage coaching skills and techniques to manage different issues in the workplace.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, one of the biggest things that I hear quite frequently with professionals that I work with is they'll say things like, man, this person's trying to sabotage me, or they've got it out to get me, or they're purposefully doing these things to frustrate me. And oftentimes I will realizing that the other person just maybe working in their own lane and not realizing that what they're doing is frustrating the other person. So I'd love to learn from your perspective. Have you ever worked with anybody you did not see eye to eye with? And how did you handle that?
Yeah, of course, right? So tons of people. And the first thing to do, and then the way that I typically handle this and have handled it in the past, is to try to understand first where they're coming from. Because as you just said, a lot of the times, if you give them the benefit of the doubt, at least at the beginning, they don't realize that this is going on and they're not doing it on purpose. So try to give them the benefit of the doubt first and try to understand where they may be coming from. What are they trying to accomplish? Do they have maybe a different personality type or style than you do, or different strengths? And that's part of what the rub is. Maybe it's they have a different set of values and priorities about what's important to them, and they don't even understand, ooh, there's a different, someone with a different perspective over here that I need to be mindful of. So try to give them that benefit of the doubt, and the first thing is to think about where may they be coming from. Why are they, being this way or doing whatever it is they're doing, and try to take it less personally too. This helps you with that, and then you can be a little bit more objective about, okay, logically, these are the things that may be going on. Let me try to see it from their perspective, and then talk with them about it. And instead of just bulldozing right in with, oh, this is frustrating, and why are you doing this to me? Because again, that's taking it personally and will get them defensive, which does not help, is ask them first, so what's going on? How is this project going for you? How are you feeling about it? Tell me a little bit more about your approach to this. Ask them questions and find out where they're coming from, because then that can help you understand, okay, what's going on over there, and even more so come up with ideas about where you guys can compromise a little bit. Does that make sense?
Makes tons of sense. It makes me think, do you ever hear the objection, no, but you don't understand?
Right. That doesn't work very well. That doesn't help. So,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Actually try to understand by asking them first. And, oh, by the way, I should add, make sure that you actually listen to what they say.
I think, what is it, the quote from Stephen Covey, seek to understand before being understood. So it seems like that sort of information really resonates well with this. I guess the question I've got is, if I feel like I tried to work with somebody, this person really gets on my nerves, they're really frustrating me, every time they're the bane of my existence. Anytime I go into work, I hate seeing them. I mean, if anybody watches the TV show The Office, it makes me think of Michael and Toby.
Right, totally.
And so it makes me think, if I've really tried, is it possible to continue working with that person, or how do you try to manage that?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously in some cases, things could just go on being really, really difficult and it's not going to work. There's those extreme cases where it's just too tough. But I would argue that 9 times out of 10, you guys can work it out and figure it out in some way, shape, or form. Remember, this doesn't mean you have to be best friends. You don't have to actually love the person. You can, like them enough, or even just say, I appreciate their strengths and, what they bring to the table. Okay. And so I do think it's possible to work it out and come to a logical, rational, conclusion, and even a compromise of, okay, if you do you can do things this way over here, I need to do things this way, but can we compromise by, meeting in the middle? So I do think that you can work it out. One of the things you want to do is have guidelines that you agree to for your behavior and how you work together more effectively. And that involves not just actually working on the work or doing the work and talking about the work, but talking about how you all work together effectively. So designing that relationship a little bit better.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And speaking of, you mentioned you're not expected to be best friends with them, but speaking of best friends, speaking of people, are there go-to people that you suggest people go to share their issues with, or do you suggest that they tuck in? And sometimes I've heard from other professionals where they said, well, I don't want to share with anybody else my frustrations because I don't want to bring them down, or I don't want to potentially inhibit on their worlds. Is it healthy to have a confidant to share some of maybe the issues going on at work with?
I really do. I think that having a confidant, and you can think about it in a couple different ways depending on, the people who are in your life. I personally like having someone like who's a work confidant, but also someone outside of work. And usually I would say start with the person outside of work, because sometimes they can be, less emotional about the whole thing, give you a more objective perspective. The person inside of the workplace, you got to make sure, obviously, that you trust them so that they're not going to go telling everybody about this, obviously. But they could give you kind of the insider's perspective. So no, I would definitely share with people and get their perspective, and keep in mind that they're adults. They can take care of themselves. It's not your job to worry too much. Okay, yes, you don't want to bring people down. I get that. But it's not your job to fix or take care of them. You can let them know in advance, hey, I need to talk to you about something kind of touchy and it's a little bit stressful. Is that okay with you? You can ask permission.
Yeah, workplace mentors are extremely valuable. They're people that you can empathize with, and they can empathize with you. I love that. And so actually it makes me think, I want to take a quick moment to ask the audience a question. And that is, who is your workplace confidant? Who is your person that you can go to ask questions, to share your concerns, share your frustrations, just the overall vent with? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that. But let's talk about other components to work, Hallie, because I feel like there's a big key here. And that is when I am relying on my work when I'm relying on someone else to complete my work, and this other person really bugs me, really frustrates me. How should I go about handling that situation?
Yeah, that's really tough, right? Because if they're not doing their work, or they're delayed, or whatever it is, that impacts what's going on for you. So even assuming, let's say that you've been working with them for a while, it kind of piggybacks on the idea that I was saying before about designing your relationship more effectively. So I would have a quick conversation with them, either over the phone or face to face. This isn't a good thing via email or text, because things can get misinterpreted and it can be touchy. So I would have a quick conversation about, hey, can we chat about how we manage this project together more effectively, what the deadlines are, what our roles are, that kind of thing. And say, I'd like to talk about, the role that we each play and what we need to be doing to be effective. And discuss with them, don't go into right away the whole, this has happened and I couldn't get this done, the blaming thing. Don't get into that at the beginning. You can deal with that a little bit later if you need to talk about the impact on you. But start out with some, boundaries, guidelines, parameters of, when can we get these things done? When can I expect to get this from you? This is what you can expect to get from me in this time frame. So if you try to have it be a collaborative thing, asking them questions about, when can you get this to me? What's a reasonable time frame for you? And inviting their feedback and input. And even if you have to say, like, look, I just wanted to touch base. Is everything going okay? Is there anything I can help you with? Are you struggling with anything? Like that at least invites open, more upfront, honest conversation. And then you can get into that kind of deeper, more difficult stuff.
Yeah, I love that perspective on there, because it's a little bit of like the IKEA effect. The IKEA effect essentially says that if I helped build something, I'm much more likely to be invested in that thing because I helped build it. So as opposed to it being my way or the highway, you can create expectations together collaboratively, as opposed to saying, these are my expectations, you need to adhere to them, or saying, hey, what are your expectations? And I'm just going to adhere to yours. Create them together and really set the tone. Are there specific tactics you leverage to try to go about like achieving those expectation setting, moments at the beginning of a relationship?
Absolutely. So I come in with ideas and suggestions about what I think is going to work, so that when I ask them if they're kind of stumped and they're not really sure, I'll say, some of my ideas were this, can I share those with you? Okay, great. Here's some of my ideas, and lay those out there so that they can, say yay or nay or whatever, but also asking what we call as coaches powerful questions that are not just yes or no questions, but they're open-ended and they invite conversation and they invite thought. And by the way, they assume a positive outcome. So for example, how can we manage this task more effectively together? How can we ensure that we each get our work done on time? Are there things I can help you with or reminders I can send you or whatever it is? And if you notice, those aren't yes or no questions. And also they assume that we can make this happen. So if you ask those types of questions, that's going to be a much more productive conversation to get to common ground here if you ask them that way instead.
I love that. And I love that you came from the side of asking questions, which is, by the way, something we teach in mentorship all the time. Whether you're mentoring somebody else or you're getting mentored from somebody else, to get greater insight, clarity into what advice somebody's sharing, ask questions, as well as when you're sharing advice with somebody else, as opposed to saying, you need to do this. You could have said, have you considered doing this? It's so much more gentle and so much more likely to stick. It goes back to the whole IKEA effect. People are much more likely to feel like this was my idea too. And so more likely for them to invest in it. But now I want to transition a little bit because I know I'm personally guilty of this. I have set expectations, and sometimes on rare occasions, and this really sucks, but I'll drop the ball. I've done it before, and then I feel really horrible about it because I feel like, gosh darn it, I totally told them this is what I expect, and then I totally hypocritically did the thing that I said I didn't want to expect happen. How do you handle that?
Well, in that you have to first realize and remember that we're all human, and the person that you're talking to that you drop the ball with is human too, and hopefully they can be understanding. So give yourself a break at the beginning and understand that we all make mistakes, and the key is that you need to learn from them. That's the bottom line. The other thing to do, though, too, is to be transparent about what happened and communicate as soon as possible, immediately, about, okay, I'm so sorry, this is what happened. I'm going to get it to you at this new deadline or whatever it is. And also be mindful of when you're apologizing and setting the new expectation, two things. Number one, be mindful and empathetic for how you dropping the ball impacted them, so that you can help them clean up the mess if there is a mess that needs to be cleaned up. And that empathy will help them feel a lot more seen and heard and understood, not just like, you ignored the deadline and that was it. And then the second thing to do is to evaluate at that point as well. Is there anything I need to change on my end, or do we need to change together so that that doesn't happen again? So are there systems that you need to put in place for yourself? Are you overwhelmed and you need to take on less and say no to more or whatever it is, so that you don't get into that situation again? So the idea is learn from it at the end of the day, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. That is good. I really like that perspective there of just being able to own your mistakes. I feel like really what you're trying to say is the I'm sorry, but, or the I'm sorry that you felt XYZ is not actually an apology in this type of scenario. It just own the thing that you did and don't blame anybody else, even if you think it was partially their fault for something happening.
Right. Just get it out there, fall on the sword. They'll be more likely to be understanding and kind to you because, again, we're all human.
Yeah, it's authenticity. No, that makes a ton of sense. So what if someone has a very different work style as me? So me personally, I'm very much a doer. And it's like if some people are ready, aim, fire, I'm ready, fire, aim. I'm like, boom, 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 let's go. And then I'll be like, okay, I totally messed that up. That worked okay, but I need to change it up a little bit. Whereas other people are like, this needs to be perfect before I submit it and anybody. I don't know, some people might be more like me, some people might be more like the opposite. How do you make sure that people work together when they've got different work styles?
So that's a great question. And this comes back a little bit to when we don't need to just, we need to understand what our strengths are and what our personality type is and what our work style is in order to be effective. And as part of that, though, we need to also be able to communicate that to other people as well. So it's not good enough to just know how I operate. I need to be able to and willing to let other people know that so they understand why I'm coming across in the way that I do. So, for example, using you, I'm going to put you on the spot here, is you need to tell people that that's how you are. Look, This is how I operate. If you don't operate that way, listen, I totally understand. Please know that I'm not trying to be, annoying or frustrating. This is kind of part of my personality type. So feel free to give me feedback, to push back at me, to kind of corral me, ask and tell them, and invite feedback and input, and let them know they can tell you what's up and be direct and honest with you. And at the same time, the third thing you need to do, not just understand your own and communicate how you come across, but try to understand how other people's styles are. So realize that not everyone is just like me, that they have different ways of working and operating, and taking the time to observe them to better understand who they are and where they're coming from and what their style is, instead of just bulldozing with your style again, is really important and helpful, because then you can try to talk their language, speak their language. You can try to, communicate with them in a way that's going to be more effective for them, and help them manage their workload in a way that's going to be more effective for them, not just how you operate.
That's a good point. Could you clarify for me, though, the difference between work differences and personality differences? I think that there is a difference. Mm-hmm. What is that difference? Just so then if I'm someone in the audience watching this and I'm thinking to myself, I feel like personality-wise, we go to Friday cocktail hours, we enjoy each other, but there are times, maybe, I guess I'll give a perfect example. For me personally, I'm somebody who can go from joking, having a good time, to being 100% focused in a snap. And so sometimes what'll happen is, if I'm joking with a colleague and then I all of a sudden turn on to serious focus mode, they might struggle, because they're we were just joking around 1 minute ago. I need a little bit of a grace period here. That, yeah. I would say, probably a work style difference, but a personality difference is probably something different. Could you explain that to me?
Yeah. So your personality traits, especially socially, kind of like you're talking about, people have a work persona and a personal persona. And so people can appear, I don't want to say dramatically different, because it shouldn't be like a Jekyll and Hyde thing, right? But they can appear to be different, obviously, based on in their personal life and in their professional life. And that's normal. We usually have kind of these two different personas, if you will. And personality-wise, though, that's more like if you're more extroverted or introverted, if you're more of a leader or a follower, or more of a big picture thinker or detail oriented, right? But your work style is more about what your strengths are and how you execute your work, and kind of how you think in the background of things. Okay, so your personality can be bubbly and all of that, but at the same time, underneath that, in terms of how you approach your work and your professional life, may be very stringent and rigid and all of that. And it's two completely different things, because that's how you approach your work and your action items, versus just kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, softer personality traits. Does that make sense?
Makes tons of sense. I love how you conveyed that. That makes a lot of sense. I think our audience would appreciate understanding that difference there. Now, one thing I want to talk about now, and this is very similar and on this topic, but let's talk about feedback for a moment. I feel one, a lot of times when I'm giving feedback, if I'm not doing it in a certain way, there's a right way to go about doing it, and there's a wrong way to go about doing it. And sometimes if I'm doing it in the wrong way, it could be perceived in not the light I want it to be perceived in. And then vice versa, when I'm getting feedback, it depends on if it comes at me where it feels like it's really critical and stinging, I might perceive this as someone really attacking me, and I'll automatically respond defensively. Sure. I guess maybe the first question is, how can I go about ensuring that when I'm giving feedback that it's being received well, and that when I'm getting feedback that I'm coming in with an open mind, ready to receive information without being defensive?
Sure. So it's really important when you're about to give some feedback, or you think you're going to get some, to mentally prepare in advance. And so if you're providing feedback to someone, or you're about to, I always tell our clients to let someone know that that's what you're about to do. So say, I've got something I'd like to talk to you about that could come across or as kind of tough to hear, or might be a little bit touchy. Can we talk about that for just a couple minutes right now? Is now an okay time, or should we talk about it later? So you're getting their permission, you're asking their permission in the first place, and you're giving them a heads up. And right away when that's the case, people may start to feel like a little bit defensive, like, okay, I got to get ready for this. But the idea is they'll be more prepared for it. And so they'll be more prepared to say, okay, like, I'm giving permission to do this, and it's okay with me. And they'll be less caught off guard. When we're caught off guard, defenses go up right away. Okay. And in this case, if you handle it this way, asking the permission and letting them know what's coming, you're setting the stage. And you want to tell them, for example, too, I'm giving you this feedback because I really care about your professional development, or I care about this project, whatever it is, so that you let them know that you're coming from a good place, you're coming from the heart, and need to give them that. And as part of that, you need to be prepared too, if they're going to provide feedback to you. Again, this is that mental preparation you need to do in advance, is take a deep breath, prepare what you're going to say in advance, and really be grounded kind of in your body the whole time. Take those deep breaths and continue with them. Be grounded in your body the whole time, so to speak, so that you're speaking slowly enough, you're calm, and you're ready and prepared to listen, but give the feedback in a good, empathetic way as well. And the whole idea here is to be just really calm and come from the heart.
I love that. I love that you came from both sides. Now, one thing that I've observed, especially in the workplace scenario, is that if I'm a senior leader, sometimes my ability to listen kind of turns off. Like, I didn't get to the CFO position because I wasn't an amazing person. And so therefore, sometimes this happens, sometimes in leadership, the listening skills kind of turn on the back burner. But what I'm hearing you is that almost someone who's at a direct report level can give feedback to a senior leader. How can they go about doing that so then it's well received and not seen as a threat to somebody who's in a higher up position?
Sure. And before you do this, you want to kind of evaluate how you think they're going to take it, and think about the timing of it, the location of it. Don't do it in the middle of, a big group of people and a big meeting, obvious things like that. So think about timing and location and everything else as part of it. And then as part of that too, think about how they might take it. What is their personality type as well? Would they be more comfortable in a certain scenario, you providing that feedback, and what's the best way for you to do so? And then use the same tactics I was talking about a moment ago to say, look, this is kind of hard for me because of the position that I'm in, but I really wanted to give you some feedback. Is that okay with you? Because I feel like this is really important to the success of our project. And I wanted to ask you a couple of clarifying questions or whatever it is. So go in with asking that permission. And what you may want to add too, since they're more senior than you, is to let them know, like, look, I'm not trying to be insubordinate, and I realize that you may have a lot more, or you do have a lot more expertise and experience at this organization, all of that, and I honor and value that. But I wanted to share something with you. Can I share that? And then we can talk about it a little bit more further.
That's a great way of putting it. I like that. Now, I love to learn your thoughts on this, Hallie. I am personally a huge fan of nonviolent communication. So observation, feeling, need, request. I explained this in the earlier part of this workshop, in the initial earlier segment, about a little bit of what that means. Essentially, I'd love to learn your thoughts. Is that something that you subscribe to for handling conflict in the workplace?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, if they get touchier or they escalate for any reason, I would suggest still going through that same step-by-step process. But remember too, when you're at work, you've got people around you. There's an HR department that can kind of help you intervene if necessary. You've got a supervisor that hopefully will have your back. So I absolutely would subscribe to that, and then keep in mind too that if you need to get some support from another place, like whether it's a coach like me, or a mentor, or from HR, whatever it is, you've got that backup, and you can handle things calmly and take it step by step and go slowly with it. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't force a resolution. Like, give people overnight to think about something or sleep on it or whatever it is. Like, take the time that's needed to work through whatever conflict is going on.
I love that. I appreciate that you sharing a little bit more about that. So 2 final questions, Hallie. One is, are there any benefits to not handling conflict in the workplace?
To like avoiding it, you mean? Completely?
Yeah. Like, sometimes I see a lot of people be passive aggressive. They say, you know what? I'm just going to tuck it in somewhere deep, and then eventually maybe one day it'll explode and go crazy.
Woo! Fantastic. Right. Yeah. So that's not so good. So I would say that you do sometimes want to consider whether you need to pick your battles. So it is okay to consider, okay, if there's all this stuff going on, what's the low-hanging fruit? What are the 2, I'm not going to take on 10 different conflicts and 10 different issues at once. Let me start with the low-hanging fruit and the most important items and take those on first. And you, in some cases, depending on the person and the situation and everything else, you may need to pick your battles a little bit. We all do that. That's just part of being in a relationship in any way, shape, or form, right? So, and be mindful of, if you're doing that or when you're doing that, like what's really, really important to take on versus not. But overall, I do not suggest avoiding the conflict. If you're picking your battles, you're picking small ones to kind of put away that you can get over and they're not going to build up and explode. Because exploding at a coworker or supervisor later on because you haven't dealt with this stuff along the way is incredibly bad news. So you do need to address it up front and handle it as you go.
I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, I think one thing that I personally subscribe to, I think has been really helpful for me, at least with handling conflict, is almost creating a list of like things that I know that I need to take a stand on. Because I think you're right. You got to pick and choose your battles. But I think what's really key is that you do it immediately. Because if you wait a day, 2 days, 3 days, for you to eventually bring it back up to this person, it's been way in the past. They may have forgotten the action they even did, or even forgot like the whole mental process they were in for that to happen. And so in my experience, breaking habits immediately and saying, hey, whoa, that's not cool. We need to have a conversation with that. Let's have a talk. That can help break them. That can help them, I guess, conjure up that mentality that I thought they had at the moment and break that habit and ideally break it from doing it in the future.
Yeah. Timeliness is important. Absolutely.
Awesome. So Hallie, thank you so much for being here this evening. I think our audience has really enjoyed learning what you've had to say about managing conflict in the workplace and just overall how to be a better professional, especially as it pertains to feedback. I had a question for you, and that is, how can our audience connect with you? Do you have any books, podcasts, websites, any things that you are working towards that you would like to share with our audience so then they could connect with you, learn more about you?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So a couple different things. So definitely connect with me on LinkedIn because we share a lot of great articles and information and timely advice on LinkedIn. And then also go to our website at Hallie Crawford, HALLIE Crawford.com. You can schedule a free consultation with me to learn a little bit more about our coaching services. But we also have a ton of great information on our blog and low-cost products and tools that are on our career store as well.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Hallie, thank you so much for being here this evening. This has been awesome. By the way, everybody who's in the program, thank you all for being here. This was our final workshop of the spring. I hope to see you in the program for the fall. I look forward to seeing how things go and grow for you over the course of the summer. And like I said, I really hope to see you in the fall, where we'll have you connected with a new mentor, see you with new guest speakers, and talk about new topics. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Hallie.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.